at the cloud, and then he changed his mind. I'm not a man, said the man, I just do what I can. I'm not a bomb, said the bomb, and then it went off in my hand. I wanna see the whole you, and not just the tattoos, but all of the shadows from your secret battles. I wanna hear the whole truth, unless you wanna lie, 'cause I believe in a heartbeat to see the story you see. I'm not a song, said the song. Who else would you wanna be? I'm not a bone, right or bone. Holding me up like a tree.
Hey, everybody, it's Nicholas Rogers with the Big Timber Lodge coming back at you from the beautiful state of Colorado. And boy, do we have a fun and exciting podcast where I will be interviewing Colorado's very own Representative Scott Bottoms, who is going to talk about all the destruction that the Liberals caused in this beautiful state and what he plans to do to help fix all of this destruction by becoming governor of Colorado. So let's go ahead and introduce Representative Bottoms. Scott, how are you doing today, sir? Take two.
Yeah, I'm still dandy.
Excellent. So, Scott, if you could please give an introduction to our national guests that are going to be watching this show today, because they might not know who you are and what type of firebrand you bring to the House of Representatives here in Colorado.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I've been a pastor for 35 years, since I was 20 years old. And I was in the Navy also for the first part of that, about 6.5 years. And I've sat on many boards, university boards, actually some anti-human trafficking groups. I worked with them. And I also have a few degrees under my belt. And I have a terminal degree, doctorate. And a few years ago decided that I think I was supposed to run for representative. Prayed about that a lot. Really felt like that's what I was supposed to do. And this last fall began to do the same thing, pray again. I was reelected to my representative position and realized that I'm supposed to be the governor of Colorado. And I can explain lots of reasons why, but one of the way you said it is the right thing. We've got to fix Colorado. We've got to reclaim Colorado at the core level, who we are.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and start asking you one question that a lot of people are, I've heard a whole bunch of different numbers, right? I've heard that there were 500 bills introduced, 700 bills introduced this year. How many bills between the House and the Senate were actually introduced here in Colorado?
657.
657 bills. And of those, how many actually made it to Polis's desk?
So Governor Polis has already signed 192 of them. There's about 65 sitting on his desk right now. All of them will eventually get there.
Okay.
He is threatened to veto a handful. In fact, he's vetoing, I think he vetoed 12 last year, something like that, but he's going to veto a lot more this year. And just to give you a little insight, it's not because he has this deep moral principled reason. It's because he wants to be president of the United States. He feels like if he vetoes some of these, it makes him look more moderate, but he did not veto the worst of the worst this year. And so that's going to really hurt him in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the big things we talk about on the Big Timber Lodge a lot is firearms. This is a 2A channel, and a lot of my viewers, we consider ourselves to be the Wolverines from, you know, the 1984 Red Dawn movie, where you had the Colorado youth fighting against the communists that had invaded Colorado. And yeah, I'm not youth, and a lot of my viewers aren't, but it feels like we are truly fighting communists that have overtaken Denver and ruling over the rest of the state. Now, you mentioned, you know, he didn't veto the worst of the worst. I mean, what are the worst of the worst bills that we saw actually become law this year, or are probably going to become law?
Yeah, the worst one that he's already signed was Senate Bill 003, and that's the 2A one that you're talking about. This is the worst gun bill that has come through any state in the history of the United States, and it's going to take away about 90% of the firearms that individuals can buy for self-defense and even some hunting guns and some things like that. But that's not really the biggest issue. The biggest issue is it is our constitutional right to own firearms, to bear arms. It is our constitutional right. And the Constitution actually says, and there shall be no infringement. And we see about 15 to 20 infringements passed through the Colorado House every single year. And so there are so many infringements. I could name many of them, and you probably could too, but this is not constitutional. And this last one will go to court. And we feel very confident it's going to be overturned in court. The bill will be blocked, and then the bill will be found to be unconstitutional. And that's the one he's already signed. He's going to sign 1312 and 1309. Both of these are transgender bills. 1312 is the one that's getting all of the attention. That when it started out, your child can be taken from you if you don't affirm transgender ideology. They did change a little bit of that bill, but it's still pretty egregious. If a school teacher, or let's say as a pastor, I can tell you, if a church does not affirm a child's transgender ideology, that according to these laws that are going into effect, you've now broken the law. You now break the law by actually saying, no, we don't think there is such a thing as misgendering and dead naming. And Johnny, you're still Johnny, which is common sense to everybody in the room. This is one of the things that kind of escapes people. You put 100 people in a room, and one of those people is transgender. Everybody in that room still knows that they are living a lie, that they are still, if a man's a man, a woman's a woman. Everybody in the room knows it, but we have this weird, Animal Farm, George Orwellian mentality that says, no, we can't say anything. We actually have to, everybody in the room must lie to themselves and to each other while everybody in the room knows it's the truth. And then 1309 is going to finance all the transgender surgeries. For in-state and out-state, we are a destination state for abortion. Now we are a destination state for transgender surgeries. And on top of that, we put $500 million to illegal immigration, with a whole section of that bill that says illegal immigrants get transgender surgeries. While our state cannot fix the potholes because we don't have enough money. We can't give teachers raises because we don't have enough money. We can't put legitimate money to hospitals, rural hospitals specifically, but we can give $500 million to illegal immigrants to have transgender surgeries.
You brought up a couple of points there that, kind of pique my brain's interest a little bit, because one of the conversations that I had with my wife the other day is you can't change your gender, right? Like it's just impossible, because after we all die, right, and we become skeletons, and 200 years from now, if somebody were to exhume your bones and they were to do a chromosome test on your bones to see if you were a man or a woman, or look at the shape of your pelvis, they will have no clue that you identified as the opposite sex. They're going to say, this is a man's skeleton, this is a woman's skeleton, and there will be total disregard for what you were trying to sell to the world and force onto other people to believe. And that's one of the big things. That's science, right? And that's a big thing. And another thing too, we're getting spicy right off the bat, and I love it, is up until a decade ago, being trans was considered a mental disorder, right? There was an acceptable mental disorder, but it was considered a mental disorder. And now we're not only embracing it in our adults, but Colorado is pushing it onto our children. And as you mentioned with 1312, when this was first introduced, they were talking about if you did not confirm your child, if you used the name that you gave your child at birth and your child said, no, I'm now Mike, I'm not Michelle. And you're like, you will always be my daughter. You will always be Michelle. And they went to school and told the teachers the state could have looked at that as child abuse and taken your child away from you. And that portion of the bill had my wife and I ready to pack up, sell our house, and just move to wherever we could get away from this. I think there were a lot of Coloradans, so I'm glad that portion was removed from the bill. But it seemed as if they added stuff back in. Did they remove the interstate commerce portion where if like I am a divorcee in Alabama and my wife wants to transition our child and I'm like, no, you can't do that. And the judge says, no, you can't do that. But my wife could flee to Colorado as a transgender sanctuary state and she could transition our child without criminal repercussions. Is that still part of the bill?
Well, here's the dirty secret about that. Okay. That's already been happening. We already have enough transgender laws on the books. And like I said, we're a destination state for transgender surgeries, that those things already happen. We already have many, many examples. And we had some of these people come and testify against 1312. They've already had their children taken away from them by the state of Colorado because nobody's doing anything about it. We've got a bunch of corrupt judges, corrupt family courts that they're activists and they're going to push the agenda. So it's already happening before this bill. Now, they did take some of that out, but the way the bill is written, when you tie it to these other laws, you're going to have your children taken away from you. Yes, that part was taken out, but when you tie it to everything else and it's already happening, you're going to have your children taken from you. And until somebody jumps into this bubble called Colorado, and by the way, we're working very hard to get that to happen with President Trump and AG Bondi and some of these others with the FBI and everything else. We've been working for a while, and we are very close now to having some of these things happen. We're already seeing the DOJ sue Colorado for illegal immigration. That's first step. The next step is about to happen in just a few weeks here, where they're going to start lowering the boom on Colorado. And that's the only way we're going to fix this stuff. Yeah. We've got Venezuelan drug gangs taking over parts of Aurora, and people are being killed and raped. And now we're putting $500 million to help the Venezuelan drug gangs accomplish this. The only way we can do this is if we have the federal government come in and rescue Coloradans from the elected officials of Colorado, our governor, our attorney general, the representatives, and the Senate. We need protected from these people. And it's about to happen. We're very, very close to this.
That's awesome. That's, and I used to be a libertarian, right? And I was not an anarchist libertarian, but I was like little government intervention as possible. At this point, though, I'm 100% on board. If we can actually get the federal government explicitly, the Department of Justice and the Civil Rights Division, to actually come into Colorado and help restore our civil rights, our constitutional rights, our parental rights in this state, then I'm all for them actually coming here and helping us out. Because, a lot of people that are outside of the state are like, just don't comply. Just do what you're going to do. These are your constitutional rights. And I'm like, or they'll be like, how can they get away with this if this is a violation of civil rights and constitutional rights? And, and I had James Cook, he's a firearms defense attorney here in Colorado. He's a premier defense attorney. And he said the reason why they could get away with it is because nobody is stopping them. And the only people that can stop them are going to be the Department of Justice and the president. And that's it. And hopefully, and you're giving me hope right now, hearing that we are going to see the cavalry come to our rescue here soon, because we have circled the wagons for so long and they are closing in on us and they are trying to perform the coup de grace. And so, sir, that does make me a little happy. And I do want to bring up the fact that last week I had a couple of civil rights activists here in Colorado on the live stream on X America News. And they were talking about the fact that Colorado is actually explicitly, our politicians that have been signing off on the gun control measures are going to be looking at criminal civil charges. We had a person already talk to the FBI. The FBI said, okay, we are turning this over to the Department of Justice, and the case has been filed over to the Department of Justice, and we're not talking civil, right? Like, because I've been talking about doing a class action civil rights lawsuit against the state of Colorado. We are talking about criminal civil rights issues due to the fact that they are utilizing Jim Crow era verbiage in the laws and restricting civil rights from all of Coloradans. I mean, what are your thoughts on that type of effort moving forward with actual criminal civil right charges against our politicians?
Yeah, this needs to happen. One of the things that seems to be lost on people is that we are passing laws in the state of Colorado right now, and I've gotten down into the well, as has some of my colleagues gotten down into the well many times, explaining. I've read just this last week, I read straight out of the Constitution. You cannot do this. This is what our Constitution says. And the Democrats, and this is important, when I'm talking about Democrats in the House and the Senate, these are people that they do not represent the average Democrat in the state of Colorado. The average agree. Democrat is sick and tired of this stuff. I use the term all the time that enough is enough. The Democrats, many Democrats throughout the state of Colorado are saying this state house, this state legislature, House and Senate, they've gone too far. They're taking our children. This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. They are mutilating our children at 12 years old with the most horrendous surgeries that leave them completely ruined physically, and they have to constantly be in the hospital the rest of their life, specifically males, and they're sterile for the rest of their life. And right. A lot of Democrats are saying we're done. Now, the leftist crazies in the House, they know they're breaking the law. They know they're running unconstitutional bills because they've told us this. I've confronted many of them, and I've confronted them from the podium, and they basically say, we'll run the laws. You get lawyers to fight them, but we're running the laws, and you can't stop us. They don't care if they're not constitutional. Right. They know they're not constitutional, but they do not care. And because they do not care about the people of Colorado, there is such a strong, vehement push, a pedophilic push toward our children, murdering them in the womb, grooming them as 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds, so that by the time they turn 12, they can start having surgery on their genitals. That is pedophilia, and we can't seem to get that in the state of Colorado. But people are waking up, and so there are going to be federal charges for representatives and senators. In our state, there are going to be federal charges for people like Secretary of State Griswold, who's broken the law so many times. We have so many documented evidence of this, and I confronted her at what's called a SMART hearing, where they come before us as representative senators, and the Democrat that was chairing it shut me down, started yelling at me, and 2 or 3 of them came over, got in my face, and are yelling at me. And the chair said to Griswold, "Okay, you can leave, get out of here." And she literally gets up and trots out of the room so that she won't have to listen to my questions. Well, that woman needs to be in jail, and I'm going to do everything I can to help the federal government do this. And Attorney General Weiser, the same thing. He may be running for governor, but he's going to be gone after by the federal government because he is so corrupt. And there's a good chance that Secretary of State Griswold, the reason she's running for Attorney General, that's the only way she can stay out of jail. Yeah. If she becomes Attorney General, then she's less likely to be put in jail. But we're coming after all these people. And there's going to be what the federal government does. But I can tell you, the moment that I'm in the governor's seat, I'm going to lose the lawyers, and we're going to indict these people, and they're going to go to jail. And Tina Peters is going to be the first person to be let out of jail, while the people that put her there, Secretary of State Griswold, will be in jail, right? Because she's actually broke the law, and Tina Peters has done nothing. Amen. And this is coming down from the federal level right now, though. We're seeing this very strongly, quickly coming down from the federal government.
And that right there, for folks that aren't aware of what Tina Peters did, Tina Peters was the county clerk in Mesa County, if I remember correctly, and right. She noticed that the Dominion voting machines, and I don't care if I get sued, I'm going to call a spade here, but the Dominion voting machine numbers seemed a little wonky, and she brought it up, and they said delete the data. And instead of deleting it, she tried to turn it over. I don't know the full story, but turn it over to like an investigator. And somehow the state found out about it. She was in her late 60s and they threw the book at her. And she's now in prison, Colorado State Prison, for 9 years. And I believe she's 70 now. And it is pretty much a death sentence for trying to expose voter fraud. And then the real big kicker was, as she's in prison, Jenna Griswold ends up giving out the passwords to all of the voting machines to almost all the counties. And she essentially did the same thing that Tina Peters did. And the state just brushed it off and laughed about it and said, there's nothing to worry about. So how is there nothing to worry about if Jenna Griswold does something like this, but Tina Peters, trying to intentionally expose voter fraud, is now in prison for 9 years? And they taunted President Trump with that too, saying you can't pardon Tina Peters because she was brought up on state level felony charges, not federal. I mean, how do you see that playing out for Tina? I don't want to get too far off the topic, but that is something that I think about daily.
Yeah, well, President Trump has already jumped into this. The DOJ is investigating this, and they're going to get to the bottom of it pretty quick. So what Tina Peters did was actually download to hard drive proof of the machines changing votes. Downloaded the proof of that, proof of corruption. And she used half of a BIOS password for this. And by the way, there are still copies of the hard drive out there that she can use when the DOJ investigates this, which they're doing right now. So she uses half and gets 9 years. Tina Peters released over 600 to 63 of our 64 counties. And I said in the SMART hearing, I was using different numbers to try to pull the media in, trying to get them to disagree with me, but they wouldn't. But so according to that, she uses half of one. Griswold used over 600. That means Griswold should be in prison for 10,800 years. And Tina Peters is in prison for 9.
Right.
So why isn't Griswold in jail?
Right.
Going by her standards. And here's something that is hugely important. They didn't try to put her in jail until she ran for Secretary of State against Griswold. That's when they arrested her.
I was not aware of that.
That's called political prisoner.
That's a banana
we do this
republic.
In Cuba,
yes,
and North Korea and China. We do not do this in America unless you're Colorado.
Right.
In Colorado, you can break the law if you're a Democrat. You can break any law you want to. And this is why we have to have the federal government come in. Because, and by the way, the representatives in the House, they are scared to death of Trump right now. And they're fighting with everything. They're calling him a dictator. Every bill they pass, they make it all about Trump. But it's because they're scared to death because somebody is about to break the bubble that is Colorado, and we're going to start putting people in jail.
Right, right. And I do have, so one of my moderators is a former Democrat, and he said you hit the head on the nail on the head when you said the majority of Colorado Democrats don't want this type of liberal progressive, authority coming from our state. And that's something that I do want to jump back onto here shortly. But were there any good bills that did pass into law this year, or any really bad bills that were stopped from becoming law, just so we can get a little bit of like positivity for Colorado? Or, I mean, has this just been a total crapshoot the whole legislative session?
Well, interestingly, one of the bills that got stopped that was kind of bad was a bill that was going to try to limit the way that the internet is used in different circumstances. It's kind of a convoluted big subject, but it basically has to do with the internet and controlling the internet and controlling AI at certain levels. And basically, it passed, and then Governor Polis vetoed it. And a lot of the Democrats were trying to get that changed, and even some Republicans were trying to get that the veto overridden. But it was a good bill because it was going to put so many, it was going to give the ability for so many people to hack into so much of our private information, and so we just shut it down, and Governor Polis vetoed it. I mean, we didn't shut it down. We tried to, and Governor Polis vetoed it. That was actually a bright spot where you're just like, wow, we didn't expect that. There was a few good bills when it comes to agriculture. There was some when it came to, these are small bills, but you got some little freedoms along the way. Some of our West Slope people ran some bills having to do with business and registration of trailers was a small one, but it was a good bill. But a lot of the good bills are not very big ones. They're kind of small. And any of the big ones that we try to run, the Democrats are just going to shut that down. It's kind of sad. But yeah, that's the way it goes. We tried to run parental rights bills. I ran a couple of bills, got shut down. In fact, I ran kind of an innocuous bill that had to do with insects and labeling. It wasn't a major big bill, but the Democrats came and told me, we like the bill, but your name is on it, and we're not going to let you ever pass any bills.
Yeah.
And so I'm the only representative in the entire House that did not pass a bill this year.
Wow.
And last year and the year before.
Well, that's because you're a firebrand. You're a firebrand, and you are one of the most animated representatives that we have in either the House or the Senate. When you get up there, you go scorched earth, and it's always a pleasure to watch. I mean, I live stream a whole bunch of the House hearings and floor votes and stuff like that, and you were always a pleasure to watch when you got up there. And let me just, before I get into one question though, why does it when we watch the Senate, and some of those senators are fantastic, but the Republicans in the Senate seem as if, you know, the volume's been turned down to like 2. And your volume and some of the other House representatives, the volume's been turned up to 11, so to speak. Why does that happen? What's the discrepancy there?
Yeah, without picking on our Republican senators too much, I have to pick on them some. They're not as passionate about the issues as a couple of us in the House are. They just are not.
Right.
And they've let some crazy bills go through that they could stop. The Republicans in the House could have stopped them, but they didn't. And they're just not as passionate about it. I would say really there's only one senator in the entire Republican Party that I would say is to the core a conservative. There's a few more. There's like 3 more that I would put in the basically conservative category. But Senator Baisley, who, by the way, I'm giving him a commercial right now and he doesn't know it. He's running for governor also. I'm going to beat him, but he is a good friend, but he's actually the strong conservative in the House. But he's also not a firebrand, like you're saying. That's not his personality,
right?
And so even when he's very passionate about something, he's not gonna be the same as me,
right?
But we just don't have that strong conservative senator group that we need. In the House, there's only so much we can do. The Senate has a lot more ability to accomplish, you know, shutting down bills and doing some things like that. And they have done some very good work, specifically last year and a little bit at the first of this year. But sometimes they just don't hold strong like they should. And it's discouraging, but that's just the reality.
I mean, okay. So that's interesting. I mean, because we need politicians to get the Republican base motivated. We need like the Great Awakening again that happened. We need, you know, old school evangelical type spirit to get people up off their couches, willing to vote, get involved, get up and testify, make the phone calls, make the emails, you know, go out and canvass for the party. And that's the one thing that I will say, you know, talking with my viewers, the Wolverines, you know, whenever we watch the Senate, it always seemed as if they just weren't as motivated as watching the House. So thank you to you and also your other compadres in the House that are the Republicans that do get up there and spit fire and brimstone, because that's what we need to get our base rejuvenated. And that kind of leads me into a question. Have you seen the Rocky Mountain Heist or read the Blueprint?
Yeah, both.
Okay. So it was interesting to me to learn that, you know, the Gang of Four, so to speak, utilized their money to run advertisements against Republicans back, you know, 15, 20 years ago in Colorado. And they were taking like a true conservative Republican, but running false advertisements saying, hey, this Republican's not conservative. They aren't strict on the border. They are not for your gun rights, like those types of things that they were doing. And what it did was demotivate the base. It actually made the Republicans in Colorado not want to support that candidate, and so they didn't turn out for the vote. And then the Democrats pretty much just had here, let me walk this candidate into the position of power, and they appointed a whole bunch of radical leftists that way. Do you see a way for us to get the Colorado GOP engaged with the voters? Because a lot of my voters tell me all the time, there's no hope. Colorado's lost. Trump's not coming to save us. Or, if we get a conservative GOP, governor, it's not going to do anything because the damage has already been done. How do we fight back against that mentality? And how do we actually fix all the damage that's been done from this legislative session in the previous decades of legislative session?
Yeah, I actually have a plan for that stuff. I've been working on this for quite a few months, and I've already been talking to many people about this, and my campaign team is helping me with this. We've got a plan of how to pick up a bunch of seats in the House and seats in the Senate, and I know that our minority leader and our assistant minority leader in the House, we're already been talking about some of this, and we're gonna get together to deal with this, and then also our state team. This is where there has to be some understanding. Philosophically, I'm not necessarily on the same page with all of them at all times. They know that. They would admit that. There's some tension because there's so much fighting in our GOP right now. But here's reality. We can build the strategy together, even if philosophically we're on a little bit different pages. Now, with that being said, we have to keep our focus, and this is where everybody, all the Republicans across the state, everybody's at different places with this. We're fighting too much, and I understand the fights. I understand them, okay? But we need to pick up seats in the House, and we need to pick up seats in the Senate, because I will be the next governor of Colorado. I will, okay? So if that's going to happen, for me to be able to do this properly, to be able to get some things through, we're going to need those seats in the House and the Senate. And I think across the GOP in the state that we can at least get together enough that we can actually reclaim the things that are important to us all. Reclaim the basic foundation of the Republican platform, reclaim parental rights, reclaim protecting our children. There's a big list of stuff where we agree on all this stuff. Now, how to get there, we may not necessarily agree on, but as long as we can agree this is our focus, we can figure out the how as we go along, and then just build a very healthy strategy. But I can tell you, I'm already getting, this is very interesting to me, because this has never happened to me. I've already been getting a lot of phone calls, emails, and things like that from Democrat leadership throughout the state, and Democrat donors throughout the state that are saying, Democrat Party has gone too far. How can we help the governor? Now, because of that also shows me, and we've been doing our analysis of the state fairly heavily. I'm going to get a lot of the independents and unaffiliated because they're seeing something in me that is different than what we've seen in the past. It's different than the other Republican candidates running, and that is I'm a leader. I'm a leader at the top level. You can't pastor churches for 35 years and not develop a basic leadership of understanding how to work with people that are not necessarily on the same page with you. You have to learn how to do these things. I have also been spending the last 8 months working with the politics and policy group out of Washington State, teaching me how to be a governor. I've already got a lot of the other things, the skill sets, but we're going to pull this all together. And all the people that are saying, it's not worth it anymore, they're going to see in me at least one more shot. I'm going to get involved. I'm going to jump back into this. And we know this already because we're getting all of these emails and phone calls by the hundreds a week that we're doing this. And so, I was already seeing that the last couple of years as a representative, where people are saying, hey, I can be a Republican again, or I can vote again. That caught me off guard. But yeah, I think the more people see and understand who I am and look at the what I've done and what I'm going to do, I think they're gonna rally, and we're gonna take another shot at this, a true legitimate shot at the governor's seat for Colorado.
That's awesome, because you've got a couple of big competitors. You've got Bennett, who is extremely liberal. He likes to play moderate on the outside, but he is blue, sapphire blue to the core. And then you also have Weiser, right? The attorney general that's, like you said, who's probably going to try to run for governor to prevent himself from being arrested. I think one of the big things, though, besides getting the base motivated, we need election integrity brought back into the state of Colorado. It blew me away when Secretary of State Jenna Griswold wrote on official Colorado letterhead to Colorado as well as to the federal government, declaring that even if the federal government passes the SAVE Act to bring, election integrity into all 50 states, that Colorado will not abide by it and will not have any sort of election integrity. And unfortunately, I brought that up to, attorney at law James Cook, and I said, can they do that? If they pass that federally, can they do that? And he said, unfortunately, Colorado can run the elections however they want, but if there are federal guidelines on how elections have to be run, then the federal government doesn't have to accept those results. And I'm like, great, then that's going to be taxation without representation. But then, he explained to me what too big to steal is when we could get enough people to vote against the powers that are in play right now for the next election. And the numbers are so large that they can't rig it, because if they try to rig it, it will be obvious that they are rigging the election. And that's what too big to steal means. And so I think that that's going to be a big play when you're running for governor and we're trying to fix this state. I would love to see, like you said, Jenna Griswold in prison. I would love to see that. I would love to see, there's a handful of politicians out there that I would love to see go to prison, especially the Denver mayor and the Aurora mayor. Oh my gosh. And he's a Republican. The Aurora mayor is a Republican, but he straight out lied to the people of Colorado and to the United States, saying there was no migrant gangs in Aurora. And that was a bold-faced lie. And he is damaging his community when it comes to that. So let me ask a question for you, because we got about 30 minutes left, and there's some points that I want to get to. You mentioned 192 bills were signed by Polis into law. Besides the worst of the worst, are there any that people need to be aware of that might have been flying underneath the radar, and so they don't kind of get caught, out of left field all of a sudden? Oh, hey, what just happened? And this law is going to be going into effect soon, or already is in effect.
Yeah, there's actually quite a few of those. Here's some basic ones. One of the things that I think was one of the most egregious lies told to the state of Colorado was, so we voted in Amendment 79 to constitutionalize abortion, right? Mm-hmm. And it was known by everybody. Everybody was saying, oh no, this is not going to involve state funds. It said that in the ballot initiative, and that it wouldn't have a fiscal note. In other words, no state funds are involved. So therefore, there's a private company in Denver that funds most of the abortions in the state of Colorado. They've been doing it for a long time. It's $1 billion company, and they've been doing that. They say they're a nonprofit, but either way, they've been funding them. Well, we passed the law this session. This actually came to my committee, and we passed it through my committee. That when I say we, it's not me. Okay, it's not the conservatives, it's them. But we now fund all abortions for people in the state of Colorado and anybody outside the state of Colorado that wants to come in and have abortion. And that one, these were the statistics that we had. Over 40% of everybody that voted for Amendment 79. In other words, they said, yes, let's constitutionalize abortion. 40% of those people said, I would not vote to constitutionalize it if the state is going to pay for it. Mm. So in other words, Amendment 79 would have been voted down enormously. Mm. But the people of Colorado were lied to, just like they do every single day in the House of Representatives. They lie to the people of Colorado. I call them out on it. A handful of other Republicans call them out on it. We're constantly saying you are lying to the people of Colorado, and they just laugh and make a joke about it and tell us, well, we're passing these bills. Do what you want. And so now the people of Colorado are paying for these abortions. And on top of that, here's another big one is, so 1312 got all of the headlines, right, because of the transgender bill. But 1309 actually has the funding to pay for all these transgender surgeries. And there's a huge big list that of all of the different kind of cosmetic surgeries, and many different. I think almost every one of our representatives, Republican representatives, got up and read parts of the list because it was basic and deeper and more involved. All kinds of cosmetic surgery that if you wanted to go get cosmetic surgery for whatever, you're going to have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars. But if you're an illegal immigrant, transgender, you'll get them for free.
What
Tummy tucks and anything to do with your face and anything, a bigger butt. I mean, this stuff is all in the list. You can read the list. And people of Colorado have no clue now that they're going to be paying for people to go get all kinds of cosmetic surgery just because they say they're transgender. And let me throw this out here because you mentioned that earlier about the word gender. I don't think we should be using the word gender when we're talking legitimately. If you want to use the word transgender, sure, use it. But the word gender is a made-up word in the 60s to begin to change the conversation on sexuality. The term is, what is your sex? XX or XY? That's it. There is no conversation beyond that. I discussed this last year quite extensively in a couple of bills, and they were kicking me out of the well and gaveling me down and saying, you can't say this stuff. But I just kept saying it. There is no such thing as misgendering. That's a made up thing. There is no such thing as dead naming. That is a made up thing. Somebody created this terminology. Somebody created this paradigm, and now it's being forced on the people of, the entire United States, but definitely on the people of Colorado. There is no such thing. And I told him, I'm not going to go by your silly rules. Just because you make a rule doesn't mean I'm going to go by it. Yeah. And there was some other, let me give you kind of other side of the coin. We tried to pass some bills that didn't get passed too. And that's just as important in the understanding of the ideology. I tried to pass a bill to stop human trafficking of minors across state lines. The Democrats voted it down unanimously. I tried to have one and by the way, we are the most pedophile-friendly state and the most human trafficking-friendly state, according to our laws in the entire United States. And you cannot. We've tried to pass bills. Representative Brandy Bradley tried to pass a bill 2 years in a row with Representative English, who's a Democrat, to put pedophiles in jail when they are found, literally caught in the act of raping a 2 or 3 year old child. And that's the way the sheriffs described it to us. We tried to get them to get jail time, and the Democrats voted against it 100%. What kind of normal people do that? Let me tell you, no normal people do that. Those are pedophiles. That is pedophile mentality that says, let's not put other pedophiles in jail. Let's protect our own. That's dangerous categories that we are voting these people in. They have mental health issues. They have pedophilic issues. They have severe emotional problems. We're voting these people in, and they are legislating from those problems. That's danger to the people of Colorado. That's danger to our children primarily, to parents. It's a danger, but we keep doing it. Yeah. I could sit here for hours telling you all the bills that when we tell you about them, I have people say that is not happening.
Well, it's
not going on.
Right. I saw something that's circulating on X today that's, making the national rounds, exposing how Colorado is so friendly to pedophiles, right? And there was one of those things where they talked about you could be a pedophile and you could rape 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 kids, but as long as you only did it one time, you don't have to go to prison or jail. It's just going to be probation. Yes. So if you do it to 9 different children's only one time with each kid, it's probation. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Because as a father with 2 daughters, and I reposted it, and I'm like, you better be praying for the safety of that prison cell if you touch my children, because it's not going to be pretty if that happens. And another thing too, these politicians love to gaslight the public. I had to sit through so many hearings, and I testified in several events this legislative session. And my favorite one, oh man, it makes me so mad, is that guns are the leading cause of death of children in Colorado. That is a bold-faced lie, because 2 reasons. One, They've been utilizing the ages of 0 to 20 to be kids, so 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, which are prime for gang deaths and also suicides, and they're not children. But two, what they don't acknowledge is that in the last statistics that I've seen from the Colorado Department of Health, in 2023, there were over 14,000 reported abortions in the state of Colorado, and there was less than 1,000 total firearm-related deaths across all age ranges in Colorado. And to me, I'm very pro-life, and especially when you look at Colorado allows abortion up to the day of birth. Those are children that they're killing. They are murdering children. If that mother is 6, 7, 8, 9 months old or pregnant, that baby could survive outside of the womb on its own, and they are murdering it. And they say that guns are the number one killers of babies or children here in Colorado. No, it's abortion. That really makes me angry.
Yeah, guns aren't even in the top 3 of what kills children in the state of Colorado. Not even the top 3. And I just got the last the 2 weeks before the end of session, found out. I'm going to be a little bit vague about this on purpose, but we found out of a baby that was being aborted, and I could tell you the hospital. I can tell you every bit of detail about it. 1 week before it was supposed to be born, they aborted it. Because here's the big thing: is Democrats say, "Oh no, it doesn't ever happen. It doesn't ever happen." It does happen. And by the way, the law actually leaves the window open for you to kill the baby after it's born in Colorado. That's the way the law is written. There's no limitation. And they're calling it now, there's a term that's post-abortive, post-birth, and I can't think of the term they use right now, but it's a term that basically says after the baby is already been born. But there was an abortion that they brought the information to my camp about this baby being aborted the week before it was born. Here's the thing: do you realize when that happens, that what they do is the most likely, I mean, there's a few ways they do it, but most likely what they do is they just flood the baby with potassium, and it slowly kills the baby. And then the mother still has to give birth. Okay, so here's my thing. If you're going to abort it a week before and you're still going to have to give birth, why don't you give birth and then let somebody adopt that baby?
Mm.
How cruel, not only is that to the baby, but for parents that are standing in line to adopt children, and you killed it the week before just so that when it was born, it wouldn't cry and you couldn't hear the cry and it wouldn't make you feel guilty. How completely selfishly barbaric is that? And that's what we do in the state of Colorado. Yeah. And we call it abortion. I hate the term abortion. Abortion is a natural process that the body does when the baby dies. We need to call it feticide or murder.
Yes.
I call it murder when I'm talking to the Democrats, which is why they don't let me pass any bills.
Yeah, that's what I call it too. And that's one of the reasons why I get so angry when I hear representatives say that firearms are the leading cause of death in children in Colorado. It's not. It's abortion. It is abortion.
These leftists in the House will lie to you to you every day, all day long. There was about 6 of us representatives sitting there the other day, a couple weeks before the end of session. And we're sitting there listening to the Democrats get up one after another on this particular bill. And every one of them were lying through their teeth, and they know they're lying. I had somebody ask me the other day about being, a pastor and being governor, and am I going to bring all my religion and all this other kind of stuff to the governor's office? Let me give you a basic concept to just process. Democrat or Republican, I don't care. Just think about this. Here's one of the things. I can prove this for 35 years of being a pastor. I am an honest person. I do not lie. I'm not corrupt. I'm not going to take money under the table. And I watch this all the time in that house from both parties, by the way. People taking money like you wouldn't believe. A lot of corruption going on, a lot of corruption in the budget, all kinds of stuff. Our governor's been bought and paid for so many times. Another book you need to add to the blueprint and the heist, the documentary, The Heist, is something called The Great Reset by the World Economic Forum.
Oh, yes.
It is basically spelling out what the World Economic Forum is doing with the Governors Association, which is all the governors in the United States except like 2 or 3. I think Kristi Noem is not one of them. but it's a plan of how to turn America socialist, and Polis is running with it perfectly down the line. Well, I'm not going to be bought. I'm not corrupt. I'm not a liar. I'm not going to cheat on my wife. I'm not going to take money under the table. So that's one of the things you get from having a pastor, a legitimate Christian pastor being governor, is I'm going to be honest. I know that's foreign in politics, and I know that's foreign to both Republicans and Democrats, but why don't we try that once? We haven't tried it. Why don't we at least give that a run?
Look, Scott, I want to touch on, what you're going to be able to provide to Colorado as governor here very shortly. That's what I want to close out with. But I get a lot of other viewers that aren't in Colorado that live in red states, right? And what we've seen recently with deep red states like Idaho and Utah, who are now seeing their capital cities being overrun with these far left liberal progressives who have now made their capital city flags trans pride flags, and all these activist flags, BLM flags, and they are flying them over the capital cities of Idaho and Utah. What is your advice to red states on how to harden the defensives so that they don't turn into Colorado 2.0 and find themselves 20 years from now in the exact same place that you and I are sitting?
Yeah, that's actually a very important question. And when I'm outside the state of Colorado, I feel that question probably more than anything else. It's the question that comes after what has happened to Colorado, and then how do we keep this from happening? I don't know if you know, also, Governor Polis flew the flag of Mexico over the Capitol 2 weeks before the end of session. Oh, God. Took down the Colorado flag and flew the flag of Mexico. One of his jobs as governor is to defend the state of Colorado against foreign enemies. Now, I'm not saying Mexico or Mexicans are a foreign enemy, but the drug cartels that come from Mexico, yeah, they're a foreign enemy, and we're pretending like they don't exist. The Venezuelan drug cartels, those are foreign enemies, and our governor is doing nothing about those kind of things. In fact, he's propping them up and giving them money. Now, I just talked to a guy. This was purely happenstance, coincidence. I met a guy last night that is very influential in the state of Oklahoma. Oklahoma is a very red state, one of our most red. But he asked me, he said, I've been watching what's going on in Colorado. And he said, I see some of this stuff beginning to happen in Oklahoma. I said, when you say beginning to happen, what do you mean? And this was key. This guy gets it. He said, I'm watching a lot of our Republicans that don't seem to care. They're not that conservative, and they don't seem to care. And I said, this is one of the luxuries that red states think they have, right, but they don't have. And when you vote in a bunch of people, it doesn't matter what their letter after their name is, R or D. It does not matter. If they are not constitutionally focused, and if they're not willing to defend the basic constitutional rights, First Amendment, Second Amendment, if they're not going to defend those two completely wholeheartedly, and if they're not going to defend the children, abortion, grooming, all of this other stuff, if they're not going to stand strongly, I mean vehemently strongly in those three subjects, then your state's going to follow. Your Absolutely. State's going to be Colorado in no time. We're seeing this just in the last couple of weeks. We're starting to see Texas starting to make some really bad decisions, right? Utah is Mormonville, right?
Yep.
They've had the most family-focused, conservative thought process for a long time. But here's the thing, is Romney, a Mormon out of Utah, one of the weakest, middle-of-the-road, fake Republican candidates that's ever been propped up for president. And he came out of Utah. And to me, that was kind of the sign that Utah is about to start changing, and that they're not going to hold to their conservative values that they've been known for centuries, right. 150 years.
Yeah.
And
It's an interesting thing, and I don't mean to cut you off short. I want to read a quote from a viewer that sent this to me that lives in Utah, and he posted this on a Utah bulletin board. And then I want to jump into your run for governorship and what you're going to do for Colorado, because we are running short on time. But this viewer said, and this is on a public bulletin for Utah to read at one of their local universities. And he said, if we don't fight this woke nonsense, we will eventually become like Colorado. That hurt me to read. right?
Yeah.
Which is trying to sign a bill where the government can prosecute a parent if they misgender their child. I remember how this started 15 years ago, and he's talking about 15 years ago in Utah. We just needed to tolerate it, is what he said. 15 years ago, just tolerate it. Just, they just want to be accepted, just tolerate it. And then he left with a fantastic quote, which says, tolerance leads to acceptance. Acceptance turns to celebration. Celebration turns to indoctrination. And that is the best warning that you could give to your statesmen, that you need to be aware of what's going on. And I think you're absolutely right. I hope Colorado is kind of the canary in the coal mine for all of these other red states, where you can no longer be complacent, sit on your couch and just allow things to happen and think, oh, we're a red state. This will never happen here. And we are seeing it in two of the reddest states, with Utah and Idaho. All right, Scott, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring up a share screen so I could share your website with everybody. And I want you to just kind of talk about what you are going to bring to Colorado as the governor. And you're already making a fantastic case. I see people that are very interested. They want to know how they could support you. And now I'm going to be sharing our your website is up on the screen. You can't see it, but it is up on the screen.
Okay. So let me add you the four things you mentioned. The three things you mentioned that the guy said. The last was indoctrination. Let me give you the fourth one: legislation. Then it starts to become law. After indoctrination, it becomes law. And that's where we are. These are the things that I've already got. We've already been working on. There's a lot. I'm going to try to give you some. You can ask some questions if you need to. But I've been working on my first 100 days in office for quite a while. I've also been working on all my cabinet positions and offices around the state of Colorado. Who's going to go into those positions? These are a lot of names that I've really been thinking through and processing and praying through. And some of them I've already talked to them. A handful of them have already talked to them. We're one of the first things I'm going to do is we're going to have a Doge department. That has to be day one. We have got to stop the corruption that is called the Colorado state budget. Another thing is I'm going to present day one. I'm going to present my budget so that the legislative body can be working on it and processing it. And one of the things that's going to happen with my budget is I'm going to cut billions of dollars day one. We're not going to talk. We kept talking about we're going to cut $1.5 billion this last year. That was a joke. We did not cut $1.5 billion. What happened is all the financial things that were coming out. I sit on appropriations. You got all these bills that all of a sudden they have zero appropriation. No, that's just how they played with numbers on paper. We're going to actually cut the budget. We're going to actually tear down a lot of this corrupt spending. There is so much waste and abuse in the budget. Just during Polis's time, we've gone from $29 billion to $44 billion. That is not okay, and I'm going to cut that. One of the things we're going to do also is we're going to look at a lot of the departments, and we're going to look at a lot of business mentality that happens through the state. Now, I can't control private businesses with this, but anything to do with state monies, state budget, any of the working groups throughout the state, we're going to do away with the stupid DEI and the pronouns. We're going to get rid of that stuff. We're going to start pulling back all kinds of taxes and controls on businesses. The reason that the Federal Reserve just last week said that per capita, Colorado is the most expensive state in the United States to live in now.
Gosh.
We're including California in this. We're including Oregon in this. And Colorado is now the most expensive state. We can fix that. The average 20 people sitting in a coffee shop can fix this. One of the things you do is you start cutting all the stupid spending and you cut taxes. I'm going to do away with income tax completely.
Woo.
Zero. I believe that income tax is unconstitutional.
It
You're
is.
already being taxed on your goods. Why are you being taxed on what you make? That's yours. The government has no right to that. You want to go buy a TV and get taxed on that? I understand. There's legitimacy to that kind of thing, but not on income tax. We're going to also beat down the property tax as much as we possibly can. We're going to take regulations off of businesses. Starting new businesses is so difficult. Colorado is the 6th most regulated state in the United States. We're going to cut regulations like crazy. It's going to free up housing. We're going to give rights back to property owners. They've been taking so many rights from property owners. We're going to give those rights back. I've already got a lot of this stuff in writing in our plans. We're going to release those into our website over the next 6 months, including some of the people that are going to be sitting in positions and doing things like that. But we're also, and here's one that catches people off guard. I'm going to limit the powers of the governor. We're going to take it back to what it was supposed to be constitutionally. The governor has been given way too much power in the state of Colorado.
100%. And
we're also going to put a team together of lawyers, and we're going to and this is going to include some police, sheriff, CBI personnel that is going to hold the legislative body, the House and the Senate. We're going to hold them to the Constitution. And if they do, this is already supposed to be happening, but it is a joke in the state of Colorado.
Right.
If you run a bill that's not constitutional, we're going to shoot it down. And I'm going to veto any bills that come across attacking children, parental rights, any of that. We're going to tear that stuff to pieces. Attacking Second Amendment rights, attacking First Amendment rights. I'm going to veto any of those. And we're going to have a team that's going to actually hold the legislature accountable for illegal bills, unconstitutional bills, which happens every day in that corrupt building. And this is just a start. We've got more, but
I'm gonna put you in contact with one of the guests that I had on last week that stood up Mountain State Civil Rights Watch, which he's a computer programmer. He's got a PhD himself, and he's created an algorithm that's going to be looking at all the bills that are turning into laws and how they violate, and it's going to rank them, give them like a grading system, and then also a description of how they're violating our civil rights and our constitutional rights here in Colorado, and it's going to be, algorithmically sound, and it would be something very easy for you to utilize to target, bills. And if somebody had to, put in the bill into this system and then run it through it, and it would give it a grade, then you would know before it could even be introduced whether or not it should be introduced, because it's going to be a clear violation of civil rights. I do have one question that keeps popping up. People want to know that when you're governor, will you end the 7-day or the 10-day or the 30-day, leave the bill on the desk? I don't have to sign it, so I could say, hey, look, I didn't sign this into law. It just became a law on its own. Will you end that?
Well, that's a constitutional thing. So I, as governor, cannot end that. That has to be a ballot initiative from the people. There are some goods to that.
Okay.
I think mostly the governor had... These are backdoor excuses that the governor can use. Well, I didn't sign it and it became a law anyway. That's so silly. But what that does do is it should force the governor to do something. It forces the governor to either sign it or veto it. Mm-hmm. I think what needs to happen is a ballot initiative needs to happen that puts that in the language, okay? That within that 10 days, the governor either has to sign it, and there is 30 days after session is over, or 10 days during session, but the governor either needs to sign it or veto it. There is no
100% agree.
There is no end of the date thing. That just needs to be done away with, and that there will be penalties for the governor if he does not sign or veto the bill.
Okay.
And those you can assign penalties for stuff like that the state is not allowed to pay for, that the governor has to pay for. Now Polis wouldn't have mind because he's got deep pockets, but not every governor is going to have deep pockets. I don't have deep pockets. I'm struggling to, I'm not struggling. It's actually happening pretty good, but I want to sound like a victim here, but I'm going to have to try to raise somewhere between $7 and $10 million. Well, Governor Polis put $33 million of his own money in the campaign, and he's going to do the same with Bennett. You asked the question a while ago, Weiser, they're going to eat Weiser alive.
Sacrificial lamb. Yep.
Yes, he's already been thrown out. The Democrat Party is not behind him. Polis is not behind him. I'm not focusing on him. I'm going to be running against Bennett in the end, and I am not worried about that. Okay. I can beat Bennett hands down. He's going to have way more money. He's going to have all the machine and everything, but I've got some things on my side. One of them is truth. Truth is the big thing. And I will expose all of the liberal hypocrisy of who he is, who he has been. Some of the stuff I won't mention it now, but Bennett, I can beat Bennett, no problem. And he will be the front runner. Polis is going to make sure of that.
Okay. So I do have your website up right now. It's https www.scottbottoms.com. And if you are feeling inclined to support Representative Bottoms on his reclaiming of Colorado by becoming governor, you can donate directly on this page. And the link to this website is in the YouTube live stream. If you refresh the live stream and you open up the video description, you'll find it there. And I've also posted it on X America News in the comment section. So if you would like to help take back Colorado by supporting Representative Scott Bottoms for governor, that is going to be available for you. All right, so Representative Bottoms, we got to wrap it up here really shortly, but I want you to just go ahead and let everybody know what you have going on. And also, sir, your church is scripturally sound, and what time is the actual service starting tomorrow? Because I might be taking my family there.
We have two services. We have a 9 o'clock service and an 11 o'clock service. And the 11 o'clock is what we stream online live.
Okay. All right. And what do you have going on right now that you want to just share with everybody besides running for governor, besides being Representative Bottoms? What do you want to share with the viewers here in Colorado and across the nation?
Well, I have to tell you honestly, I love Colorado. I love the state of Colorado. Get out and enjoy the mountains. Get out and do some outdoor something. Refresh your brain. I'm trying to do that right now, getting out of the house. Now, I'm getting out of the House of Representatives, finally finished session. Get out and clear your mind. Enjoy what Colorado is, and then that will hopefully invigorate you to fight against the brokenness that is becoming Colorado, which we don't want. Go to scottbottoms.com. You can get all the information, do the stuff. Sign up for my email list. That's huge because that's where you get all the information on where I'm going to be. I'm everywhere, all over the state. Over the next 6-8 months, everywhere. And so, and come talk to me, text me, email me, and donate lots of money to me. I need that.
Oh, man. All right. Well, Representative Bottoms, thank you for coming on the Big Timber Lodge. I would love to have you back on when we get a little bit closer to the actual race for governorship and actually to talk about some of the game plans that you have, because I've got questions for the future, which I'm sure you haven't addressed yet, but how do we deal with surrounding states demanding eminent domain on our water rights here in Colorado? How do we fight the cartel? What's that? I forget what it is here in Colorado Springs that owns the majority of land that are doing development and they're going out of control. But there's a lot of questions that I have. But, sir, thank you for coming on the Big Timber Lodge. God bless you. God bless you for what you're doing here in the state of Colorado and being, the person that you are. I watched you get up and fight for our rights all legislative session. And, sir, I believe that if you become governor, you will continue to fight for our rights. So thank you very much. And you have a wonderful night. Everybody, thank you for joining.
Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day. Absolutely. Everybody, thank you for joining the Big Timber Lodge on X America News. And as always, Colorado, let's get to work.